welcome to my channel. Today's story isn't about ghosts or the paranormal, but about a situation that could happen to anyone. Let's get started. After living in an apartment building for 36 years, I can tell you, new neighbors are Russian roulette. Some residents arrive quietly, causing no trouble to anyone, and some become a headache for everyone unlucky enough to live nearby. That's exactly the kind of neighbor who moved into the apartment above me in early October. She was a woman who seemed to have an endless supply of things that needed to be put away. Every evening, right at 9 p.m., she would either start hammering, drilling into the walls, or moving furniture across the floor. I've always had sensitive hearing, so I know firsthand what it's like to wake up at night because of annoying sounds. The city is always noisy, whether it's drunks singing at the top of their lungs or nocturnal critters causing trouble in the streets. You wouldn't believe how many times I've been woken up by an opossum knocking over a trash can under my window. But those awakenings were rare and brief. Whenever they happened, I could easily fall back asleep. But from the day that woman moved in, the nights were filled with the sounds of renovation and furniture being moved. The noise upstairs continued every evening for 3 to 4 days. Then there was a quiet evening, and I started to hope it was over. But she must have brought a new batch of things, because the next evening, it all started again. This routine plunged me into a hellish cycle of exhaustion. I'd fall asleep late and wake up completely drained. In the morning, I'd have to drink strong coffee and go to work, hoping I could get some sleep in the evening. I know I should have just talked to her, but I really hate confrontations. I've always found it terribly unpleasant to have to complain to someone. Plus, I didn't know her name, which would have made the situation even more unbearable for me. I just sat on the couch, waiting for the noise to stop. 3 weeks passed, and there was no sign that she was finished unpacking. My patience ran out one evening in late October. The weather was unusually hot, so hot I had to open the windows. The neighbor upstairs got to work, following her usual schedule. The noise was as loud as on previous days. I tossed and turned in bed, trying to cover my ears with a pillow, like I'd done many nights before. But this night was different. The heat, mixed with drowsiness and the sounds from above, all of it together triggered a terrible migraine. It felt like my brain was swelling, trying to crack my skull open and escape from the noise. I couldn't take it anymore. I sat up in bed, inhaled all the air my lungs could hold, and screamed, "Quiet!" After my scream, there was a loud, dull thud from upstairs. She started unpacking another box, I thought to myself. Unbelievable. She must have heard me. My scream was so loud, I was probably heard on the 5th floor. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for the sounds of a hellish orchestra of moving furniture. I waited. Time passed, but no more sounds came from above. Maybe she did hear me after all. Maybe she finally showed some respect. I felt my headache subsiding. I closed my eyes, letting fatigue carry me into sleep. For the first time in a long time, nothing bothered me. I woke up with the sunrise, and I didn't have to drink half a liter of coffee to stay awake. I went to work with a smile on my face, feeling good. Everything was easier. I was happier. Compared to before, it was sheer paradise. In the evening, I came home, hoping the previous night wasn't an exception. If only I were that lucky. After sunset, movement started again in the apartment above, but this time, the sounds were different. Knock, knock, knock. The sound repeated over and over. I couldn't identify the source. It wasn't a musical instrument, I was sure of that. There were irregular pauses between the sounds, 5 to 10 seconds. Definitely not footsteps. The pauses were too long. Not a hammer. The sounds were too soft for that. These thoughts haunted me all night as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling with tired eyes. Maybe she's tapping her foot to some song, but the sounds are completely arrhythmic. Maybe she keeps dropping a ball, but why would she do that? Is she a juggler? No, that would be absurd. Those were just some of the thoughts racing through my head as the knocking continued in the background. I fell asleep well after midnight. When I woke up in the morning, the noise had stopped. I assumed she'd just started renovating her apartment again. All day, at work and on my way home, I silently prayed not to hear those sounds again. Although they weren't as loud as usual, something about not being able to identify their source made them even more irritating. However, to my horror, with the rising moon, the noise resumed. Knock, knock, knock. Lying in bed that night, I clenched my teeth from unbearable irritation. I covered my head with the pillow again, but it was useless. I could still hear those sounds, no matter how hard I tried to muffle them. They made me feel like someone was constantly poking my brain. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe she was angry about my scream and was doing it to get back at me. Maybe she just wanted to drive me crazy with her antics. I tried to fall asleep, but I couldn't. The sounds from above echoed in my head, louder than any noise before. It was pure torture. My heart stopped when the phone rang. I cautiously picked it up, wondering who could be calling me in the middle of the night. "Hello?" I mumbled. "Peterson, where the hell are you? We've been waiting for you for 45 minutes. "Oh, hello, sir. Sorry, but my shift doesn't start until..." I looked out the window. Sunlight had already broken through the clouds and was lighting up my room. "Shit. Sorry, sir. I'll be there in 15 minutes, I said, jumping out of bed and hanging up. Then followed one of the worst days of my life. I was like a walking corpse, with only one thought circling in my head. What were those sounds? When I got home, all I wanted was to understand what was happening upstairs. Thoughts of rest didn't even cross my mind. All I wanted, all I did, was wait for the sounds. I sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, and, like clockwork, the noise resumed late in the evening. Knock, knock, knock. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. I didn't care about causing a scene. I rushed out of my apartment, ran up the stairs, and pounded on her door. "What the hell is your problem?" The sound stopped, but it didn't satisfy me. I was sure that as soon as I left, she'd start again. I yanked the door handle. The door was unlocked. I walked in without thinking. Her apartment was cold and quiet. I went into the living room. My neighbor was there. She was lying on her back at the foot of a small stepladder next to the corner of a wooden table. The corner was covered in a mixture of dried brown blood and long black hair. On her temple was a crust of blood, hair, skull fragments, and brain matter. Both her hands were gnawed down to the bone. A swarm of flies had nested on her body. The living room windows were open, letting in the autumn breeze and dispersing the smell of decay. As I stood there, looking around, I heard a rustling sound. I watched in disbelief as a small animal scurried out of one of the boxes. It wasn't a possum. It didn't notice me, too focused on its food source. The opossum crawled over to my neighbor's body and started gnawing on her hand. Each time the opossum tore off a piece of flesh, her hand would lift slightly and then fall to the floor. Knock, knock, knock. Some everyday stories can be more frightening than something paranormal, right? Don't forget to rate the video. Until next time.